All right, strap yourselves in. We are going to the movies. These are some fun moments within movies that feature or mention or have prog music in it. If you're like me, you're always on the outlook for prog being out in the wild, and I feel like we always get teased for prog being in movies in some of the trailers. Like, how many times have I seen All Good People in a trailer by Yes, and it never ends up in the movie? You know, I'm thinking of like Mr. Deeds.
But now he'll be called the rich guy from the producers of Big Daddy.
I got wicked bad frostbite when I was in the Scouts. Check it out.
The hideousness of that foot.
And I remember being in a theater and seeing a trailer for Pompeii and having Stephen Wilson's The Raven That Refused to Sing being in the background.
Whatever is happening here, live with me. My God is gonna stop it now.
That track was never in the actual movie itself. So I feel like we get teased quite a bit with prog being in movies, but we never actually see it in the final cut. But I was able to find 5 moments, just within my own recollection, of movies featuring prog, and I've got another 5 that exclusively feature a single band. So let's talk about 5 moments that movies have included prog in it. And the first and most notable one, I think, is I Love You Man with Rush. This movie has, the friendship built around both of these dudes, both Jason Segel's and Paul Rudd's character, both loving Rush, to the point where they go to a Rush concert, and they had a Funny or Die skit or short that features them meeting the band. And, it actually has them playing Rush music. So there's so much of Rush's music that's baked into this movie that, I don't know, I got very excited. Like, I can't say slap da bass without invoking Paul Rudd's inflections.
I have been known to slap the bass big time.
Why is he talking like a leprechaun?
Everybody says.
Yeah, that one I think is probably one of the most obvious ones. One that isn't as obvious, and one that I wish more people knew about, was French-Canadian films. There's a whole Montreal French-Canadian movement within cinema that I feel like a lot of people aren't necessarily being exposed to. And when I took film studies in university, we did a whole curriculum over that where we watched like Jesus of Montreal, and the one that I particularly loved was Crazy. And it follows this French-Canadian Quebec family, and one of the sons, because there's like 5 of them, hence Crazy, by the name of Zach, who deals with his self-identity and his sexuality in the 70s and 80s, where his dad just had to push all of that aside to concentrate on the family and concentrate on his own livelihood. He was brought up never to even think about all that stuff, and so it was quashed right from the beginning. Whereas Zach, he's starting to experiment with that. He's experimenting with his sexuality, experimenting with drugs as a teenager from the 70s. And with that, you get the music of that. So you have a lot of David Bowie. But the one scene that I remember the most featured a Pink Floyd song of Shine On You Crazy Diamonds, or Shine On You Crazy Diamond. And I loved that sequence, and that sequence still plays in my head, where you have that doon, 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 kind of big crescendo moment, and he pops into frame from the bottom. And I absolutely loved that, because it was the first introduction of him as a teenager, and it really encaptures where he is and where he's going. So if you haven't seen Crazy and you love prog music, I highly recommend it. It is French, and it's very French. It's very French-Canadian. So, yeah. Another one that is pretty obvious in the same vein as I Love You Man is Anchorman. The big flute sequence where he plays a bunch of Ian Anderson styling of, Jethro Tull. At one point, he even screams out Aqualung. So that one's a pretty easy get. That's a pretty easy one there. One that I really enjoy is the big rant in American Psycho. This is number 4. When Patrick Bateman is going on his big, Phil Collins Genesis rant.
Do you like Phil Collins?
That's when I knew, that's the point where I knew this thing was a satire. This was the point where I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous, because he's saying...
I really didn't understand any of their work. It was too artsy, too intellectual.
And I'm like, you're wrong.
I think Invisible Touch is the group's undisputed masterpiece.
I mean, obviously, I know people have that opinion, and it's a valid opinion, but, that was the point where I'm like, but you're so friggin' pretentious, and you're so friggin' full of yourself and up your own ass. How could you not love the pretentiousness of the Peter Gabriel stuff? But anyway, loved that sequence. I love where he's just like, you like Phil Collins? Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed that one. The final one is a movie that has not aged well, based on the two actors that portray this. Get Him to the Greek. There's a whole Mars Volta section.
Who's Mars Volta again?
Oh. And I didn't realize that the Jonah Hill reaction gift where he's like, was him listening to Mars Volta. I had only seen the GIF, and when I posed this question out to my fan base on Twitter, somebody said, Get Him to the Greek mentions Mars Volta. And I'm like, they did? And then I searched it and I saw the clip and I'm like, oh, that's where that comes from. Well, that makes that GIF 10 times even better, because now I know that he's enjoying and listening to the Mars Volta. And I know that it's played in a very tongue-in-cheek kind of way where, I guess Jonah Hill's character's girlfriend is like, I do not want to miss sleep or miss rest or sacrifice being tired for that. I'm not going to do that.
I don't think it's worth me being tired over. Just stay and watch Gossip Girl with me.
Yeah, I know that was kind of the setup for the joke, but I love the fact that at least Jonah Hill enjoys the Mars Volta. I don't know what the context is for that, so maybe he was just using it to further the plot or something, but I still love the fact that Jonah Hill loved the Mars Volta and wanted to go to the concert. So, yeah. So let's talk about the single band that I'm sure a lot of you are like, but wait, this band was mentioned in this movie and whatnot. Let's talk about them. We got King Crimson. King Crimson has been used a lot in movies, and I'm very excited about that. So let's talk about 5 times. I have a little bonus as well that King Crimson was used in movies. The first one was the post-credit scene. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 has, the kind of new Guardians talking about music and where they love. And, I think Adam, I can't remember his full name, but, like the perfect man kind of an idea, is like, oh yeah, I love Adrian Below, both with his solo project as well as King Crimson.
Okay, how about your favorite musical act?
Adrian Belew, both solo and his work with King Crimson.
I did the whole Leonardo DiCaprio thing of like, there it is, talking about Prog, talking about King Crimson. Another one that kind of came out of nowhere is a smaller film that I don't know a lot of people know about, of Buffalo 66. Not a great movie. Like, it's very artsy, very art house. But there's a whole dance sequence using Moonchild from In the Court of the Crimson King. And it's very dreamy. It's very atmospheric. It's very, like, surreal in that sense, and the song itself is also all those things. So I really enjoy the fact that, Buffalo 66 kind of used that in its dream sequence moments. I think the one moment that is like the most Prog of all Prog in movies is The Children of Men. And there's a whole sequence within Children of Men, where the lead character goes to see his cousin. I believe it's his cousin. And he's a member of parliament. I think he's the prime minister. And he's in the building of animals, and you can even see the flying pig. And at first I'm like, oh, are they going to use like dogs or sheep? And they decide to use
For the court of the crimson.
In the Court of the Crimson King, which I think it's a little bit of a crossing of wires in that sense. I'm not that big. Like, I was like, oh, wait a minute, this doesn't, what? Because you're saying that for one thing and you're executing in a different. But the song and the atmosphere and the vibe fits very, very well. You know, it's like we're in the court of the Crimson King. We're a person with all the power, but does he actually have a power where power is just being obliterated because nobody can have kids anymore? I thought it was used very brilliantly. I just wish that the setup was a little bit different. You know, I think it would have really helped itself if the setup was paced a little bit differently and we didn't get set up for one thing and, you know, executed in a different way. But it's the biggest Prog sequence that I've ever seen. And I remember being in theaters being like, oh my god. Another one that's a little bit on the smaller side, and I know it's a, you know, I only found this after doing some research, is a movie called The Big Loss. And they have this whole sequence where they use Lark's Tongue in Aspect Part 2. And at first they use it as like a radio sound, like they're playing it from the radio, but then they use it as background music. And yeah, I thought it was really interesting. It definitely captured the mood. It's very chaotic, it's very bombastic and that kind of stuff, and it works very well within the scene itself. So yeah, I thought that it was used very well. And yeah, let's come to the fifth one. And this is another very proggy movie, and I love the fact that they opened it up like this. And that is the movie Mandy. If you haven't seen Mandy and you love a good trip, you love a good Prog aspect, you got to check it out. It's Nicolas Cage being one of his most Nicolas Cage-ish. Loved it. I still watch it very regularly because I freaking love that movie so much. The whole title sequence uses Starless. What a better way to set the mood, set the atmosphere for this drug-induced murder rampage of Mandy, and like this whole taking down this like drug trip cult thing. It's basically if you took John Wick and instead of having a dog be killed and it's an assassin, it's a logger with some anger issues taking down a cult after assaulting and killing his wife. Absolutely love this movie. Love the sequence of that particular scene as well because it sets the mood. You know, this is the first thing people see, and when they see these violets and purples and all these like crimson in the title sequence, all followed up with the Starless track. Aces. Absolutely aces. So now let's go to a bonus. This is a bonus that when I was watching it in theaters, I kept going, that's 21st Century Schizoid Man. What are they doing? But it's on the movie The Power Rangers, and it's a bonus because it's not technically a King Crimson track, it's a Kanye track because it samples 21st Century Schizoid Man because it's the track of Power. And the sample that he uses is the whole 21st Century Schizoid Man. Boom. But they use that "bow" as the main sample. Even though I'm not well versed and well experienced within the whole sampling used within music, I do feel as if the sampling in this was awkward. It was clunky. It doesn't flow very well. And maybe that's part of the whole reason for it, but I don't know. I like a sample to be used in a flow, to used in a way that enhances the music rather than kind of stopping the music. So anyway, that's why it's a bonus. It does feature 21st Century Schizoid Man, but it features it in a different song. So that's a bonus. Those are 5 tracks that were used in kind of in reference to King Crimson, and 5 things that were used just in general. What are some moments in movies that feature prog music that I didn't cover? Please let me know about that by commenting down below, because I'm always looking for a new track or a new movie that features Prog. Because, you know, I'm always on the look. Whenever I see Prog in the wild, I'm always like, yeah! So please let me know about anything that I missed by commenting down below. And yeah, I think that's all I got for you guys today. So thank you all so much for watching. I'm going to have some new reviews coming up very soon. You know, I've been listening to a lot of pop music, as you could tell by my last 2 videos. So I haven't had a whole lot of time to really dive into Prog music this summer. So I'm hoping in the fall we're going to get some really good releases now that we have new music from Opeth coming out. I'm pretty excited about that. But anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it today. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.